Hi. Oh my gosh. Hello, 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 hello. Oh wait, I have this. See, I don't need to stand here because I have one here. It's magic. I was late coming out because I needed to hug Del. I have no words for what he is choosing to do. And it hits home. It's very personal for me as well. For those of you who don't know my story, I'm about to bore you with it now, because this whole topic is why I'm standing here today. Listen, I am newer to this space, so to speak, and so I don't know how much specific advice I have for you. My goal is to share my journey in hopes that you can do a little bit better than I have. Because it really did begin with so much fear. I didn't realize it till later how much fear defined me. And then the faith that I always had started to grow and come out. And I realized that that was the only way to freedom. So to be here full circle, Freedom Uncensored, is such an honor. And again, I want you to take what you can from this and just please do better than me. So the journey begins, well, I mean, I'm not going to tell you my age. You can Google it, or don't, actually. I'd prefer if you don't. But I grew up a proud Army brat. Brat is a compliment in the military world, right, guys? Yes. By the time I was 11 years old, I'd lived in 3 other countries besides this one, so I have no idea where I'm from. I just say, pick a state, I probably lived there. And I just had the absolute best upbringing with 2 younger brothers, and the best parents who loved me unconditionally. That's where, as youngsters, we hopefully find out where love is and should be unconditional. Throughout that military upbringing, my dad made us memorize this. Yeah, well, you're laughing because you are a West Point graduate, right? My dad was the class of 1970 from the United States Military Academy. This is part of what they had him memorize. I don't know that they still do it today with cadets. So I heard maybe, yeah, it's a little, I know, it's political now. But back then, this is what they had cadets memorize. And this is what we had to do as kids since literally the moment we could talk. Make us to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong. And never to be content with a half-truth when the whole can be one. That first part in particular is what I had to dig deeply into my whole life. I just didn't know it was gonna come until it came, and it came hard. What I also didn't know is that my parents had been doing that from day one, from really the moment that they met. I was here for convocation about 1.5 years ago, if any of you were there for that. I show this every time. Well, thank you. I'm glad you stayed awake that day. Good job. This video, I play it every time I have the opportunity to speak because it is my why, for why I am here today and why I realized that I had to fight and choose the harder right. It's a snippet from an NFL Films documentary that they did on my brother who works for the Baltimore Ravens. Any Ravens fans in here? No, me either. Don't tell him I said that. Do not tell him I said that, please. But they did a story on him because he's still with the Ravens for 23 years now, and in that, talked to my parents and found out this incredible story that I didn't know about my mom and dad until I saw this.
We ended up getting married at West Point. We were young and very naive. My parents pretty much disowned me and didn't come to the wedding or anything like that.
Mom and Dad won't talk to her because she married a black man. They were in Panama, and she called her mom to say, I'm gonna have a baby, and her mom hung up the phone.
Because of my parents and all, I didn't count on other people. It was just, I knew I could count on Gary.
There were many things that were said about what a relationship with a black husband would be and how you would end up being treated, etc. And so how are her parents going to know she's okay? So I believe it was once a month.
Once a month.
And once a month, I would pen a letter. Here's where we are, here's what's going on, here's what we're doing together. Never received a return letter.
They were always really nice letters. I mean, I questioned them every month. I'd say, I don't know why you're doing it. I do not know why you're doing this because they'll never write you or anything. And he'd say, they need to know you're okay. All right.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It was to prove a point. you know, I am taking good care of this young woman. I am doing the right thing. When we finally did get together and I had the opportunity to meet her father, he says, Gary, in his voice, you know, he says, Gary, I'd like to just forget this and move forward from here. And I guess there was a little bit of a burr under my saddle there. And I said to him, I said, Duke, I said, I can never forget the last 6 years because I had to live this. But this is day one of our relationship, and we go forward from here.
Mom and Dad, they had to face the ultimate test. My mom was 21 years old. And isn't love just love? We thought so. Remember, in 1970, 1971, I mean, this is just a couple of years after it became legal to marry outside of your race. So it was a very different time. And I think of it like, what? That doesn't make sense to us, right? But back then, at 21 and 23 years old, they had to choose the harder right. So I show that in hopes that you understand why, slowly but surely, I had to face some tough tests and do, hopefully, the harder right. I didn't always do it, but every time I see that video, I'm reminded that I must. So much work to do. Remember, the harder right. I'll skip ahead. I was 11 when I announced to my mom and dad that I wanted to be a sportscaster. 12, I guess, and that was in 1984, so again, do the math. I was watching the LA Olympics, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to talk about it and go on TV and do all these crazy things that girls didn't do back then, especially girls who looked like me in the 80s and certainly into the early 90s. So the journey begins, and I'm really, listen, I don't know why they hired me looking like that in the middle. It's, I should take it out of this slideshow, but I choose to keep it to remain humble. And that, yes, you can glow up with some help, but the journey took me literally everywhere, from Indiana University, go Hoosiers, who crushed UCLA today, thank you college football fans, to South Bend, WSBT, to Indianapolis, to the ABC in Tampa, Fox Sports Net Florida. I got to cover all of the amazing teams and coaches and players, things I had never dreamt of, and let me tell you, the entire time I was scared to death. Fear has been a theme today and yesterday for you, and will be throughout the day. I was so scared because I was told, girls don't do this. Girls who look like you certainly don't do this. This is from peers. This is from people I looked up to, and I lived in fear, but I had this dream, and my mom and dad said, okay, you gonna listen to them, or are you gonna pursue this dream? If you listen to them, that's on you. So you make the choice, harder right. The real fear kicked in 2004 when I was working in Washington, D.C., and I got the call. I got the call that everybody in my industry waited for, and it was from the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN, lovely Bristol, Connecticut. And the problem was, I didn't know it was a problem until I knew. I was pregnant with my second child. I had a 20-month-old at home, and I went up to do the big audition, and I crushed it, because that's what happens when you're pregnant. You don't care about anything else. You have a baby bouncing on your bladder. You're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so I got home, and I got the offer. And I got really scared. For those of you who are a little older in the audience, Stuart Scott, booyah, he was the GOAT at ESPN, for those of you who used to watch, and he passed away almost 11 years ago from cancer. One of my dearest friends who believed in me long before I believed in myself. He felt my fear and he pushed me through it. But back then, we didn't even really know each other. But he heard I was about to take the offer, and he called me and he said, listen to me, don't go unless you are really ready, meaning you're done having kids. You're done building a family, because this really is a boys' club. And you're gonna have to be prepared and only focus on that, not your family. So at that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, my lifelong dream since I was this big, and here it is. And I couldn't do it. And my agent looked at me and she said, you're insane. ESPN does not need you. You need ESPN. And if you do this, you will never get a call back from them again. Even my parents, who supported me, of course, more than anybody, my parents said, are you sure? Like you, this really, sweet at the time, not anymore, shy kid who was doing these crazy things that everyone said she couldn't do. Like, you got the offer, you're gonna turn it down, are you sure? And I was so scared to turn it down, but because of the way they raised me, family first, I knew I had to choose that. You hear it all the time, people on their deathbed, right, who said, what's the one thing they wish they had done more? And that was be present and be home more. And so I remembered that and said no and turned it down. And it was such a scary thing, but I did it through prayer and thought, okay, if this is not meant to be, then I'll know that, and God has another plan. And if it is, then I'll get another call. So I took the chance and had that second baby and had another one too. And she is so sassy. She is at a football game at Ole Miss right now. I hope she's behaving. I tried to get her to come here, so you can help me guilt her. I will pay you all. There's still time to transfer. But I just went with it. I'm like, this is what I believe I was put on this earth to do. Have babies, be a mom. 3 years later, guess who called? ESPN called back. And I went up there in 2007, and I'd had my third baby, and I thought, thank you, God, for giving me that chance. And what it did, this was a theme I didn't realize till years later, is when you dig deep and listen to what's in your gut, even if you don't want to, good things usually come of it, even if it isn't part of your plan. So at that moment, the harder right, in hindsight again, and in it I was scared, was to go with what I knew to be the most important thing, which was family and babies, and it turned out. And let me tell you, when I was there, you guys, I got to do things I never dreamt of. My first day on the air was at Sports Center, the 6 p.m. Sports Center in 2007. I was scared to death. I talked too fast, just like now. I was a disaster. I was doing highlights way too, it was terrible. But I had signed a contract, so they were stuck for at least 3 years. And I got to do it all, and these are just some snippets. Yes, the Masters. I was, I believe, the first woman of color to host coverage from the Masters for 7 straight years. I was at Augusta National and walked in scared. Because why? Because you're not supposed to be here. And I didn't know much about golf, so I had to dig deeper and learn about that. Not just football and basketball and baseball and hockey, because when you're on SportsCenter, you have to know a little bit about everything. And if you screw up, you will find out quickly, especially thanks to social media, which was not the case when I started in 1995. I don't even know if there were computers. Everything was black and white TVs, right? No. Times have changed, but I look back at the things that I got to do, and so beautiful, and I'm so grateful for all of it. And then the world changed. I call it the summer of love. Don't we call it the summer of love in 2020? When everything changed and basically blew up and led to what Dell was talking about with COVID and the vax mandates. I don't know if you know this, but ESPN and ABC are both owned by Disney. And yeah, they had rules that a lot of us didn't agree with. But we were told that by September 30th, 2021, we had to be fully vaccinated or we would be fired. And I didn't know I'm not a scientist, I'm a sportscaster. What I did know is that it took a simple, quick Google search to understand that it takes, on average, 6 to 9 years for the FDA to approve a vaccine. And I'm no scientist, but I was following the science of that, right? Like understanding that it takes scientists a lot longer than 6 months when they're telling us to do what? To jab it in our arm and to get another one and to get another one. But I was afraid. Again, do you see this fear theme? It's awesome. I was afraid that if I didn't take the vax, then I wouldn't have a job. And it was a very real fear. And I was afraid of taking it as well. And I think we all knew why. I mean, we had a gut feeling, but what did we do? Many of us decided to do it, to keep our jobs. I had unfortunately gone through a divorce. I was raising 3 kids financially 100% by myself. 3 kids in college at the same time. One's out, thank you, has a job, which is next for you, right? Get a job. And 2 who are currently still in college, and I'm doing this financially by myself. And I knew in order to make sure they had the gift of an education, I couldn't lose my job. I mean, Dell, I still have trouble forgiving myself because I did it. I caved. I felt I had no choice. I prayed about it. The night before the deadline to get the shot, I got on my knees. I said, Lord, just please guide me. And when I wake up in the morning, because I had an appointment to get the shot, when I wake up in the morning, just give me a sign. And I got in the shower, and obviously I'd taken thousands of showers in my shower at home, and this time, when I washed my hair, I opened my eyes, and then the ugly brown marble that was on the wall, that used to just look like ugly brown marble, it was the shape of an angel. And I saw it, and I almost stopped breathing. And I'm like, that's the sign. I took that as, you need to take care of your kids. You gotta pay the bills. You'll be okay. So I said, okay, I asked for a sign, and now he's telling me to go. And so I went to the pharmacy, and I sat in the car for 20 minutes and cried and thought, what a sellout I am. I am listening, I'm caving to the fear and to the mob. And I walked in there and I sat down, and the nurse looked at me. I don't even think she was a nurse, poor thing. I mean, she had a job to do as well. And she looked at me and she said, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm being forced to take this. And I'm devastated. And she looked at me and she held my hand and she said, this is so wrong and I am so sorry. And at that moment, she put it in my arm. I can honestly say something changed in me at that moment. Something changed. I like to believe that it went right through me, and when I went to the bathroom, I peed it all out. That's what I chose to believe that day, right? Just go along with me there. Yes, it's gone. But something, like a fire began to burn in me, and I got back in my car, and I had a previously scheduled podcast with a former NFL quarterback by the name of Jay Cutler. And it was pre-planned, and I raced back home, and I lifted up the lid of the laptop and did the podcast, and halfway through, he's like, so what's the Band-Aid on your arm? And I was like, oops, I forgot to take that off. Like, I was in such a rush. And I realized I'm on a podcast that would eventually be posted, and I'm a member of the media. I know that everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, right? And I said, well, I just had to take the shot to keep my job. And I said, I think it's sick and wrong for any employer to force their employees to do something to their bodies. But I have a job that I love, and I've worked my whole life, and I have a job more importantly that I need, and I did it. A couple weeks later, podcast dropped, and I got calls, and I was pulled off the air. I had assignments taken away from me. I was suspended for about 13 days, made to publicly apologize for my words that offended Disney by saying that I think it's sick and wrong for a company to do that, and they were within their rights, I guess, to do that. But it's amazing to think now what companies choose to allow, and even at that time, allow their employees to say. And so what did I do? I went in my hole, and I said, okay, I'm sorry, I need my job. That's why I did it, I need my job. About 10 days in, while being fully canceled, while losing friends, while getting threats of death, people threatening to rape my daughters because of my opinions about a vaccine. And they went after them on social media. They found them. I got really, really sick. Sick with a big old case of COVID. Because of course, the vaccine that I took was forced to take that was going to prevent me from getting it or giving it to you worked really well. And one night, though, I was alone. I was alone for those 10 days, the entire suspension. My kids were at their dad's house, and I was alone. And realizing that I'd ruined my career by speaking up, by saying like 5 words. And my heart was jumping out of my chest for 24 hours straight, and I was sweating, and I couldn't eat, and I was like, this is it. It didn't come out when I went to the vet. Like, this is it. And I got up to take myself to the hospital because no one was going to do it. And when I stood up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I fell over. I collapsed. And I realized how alone I was at that moment, and that if I went to shower before I went to the hospital, which was the plan because it had been 3 days since I showered, I was that sick, that no one would find me. I'd die if I hit my head and fell in the shower. So I went back to bed and prayed and said, Lord, if I'm supposed to be here, just let me wake up. And I promise I won't be silent anymore. So I woke up, obviously, and a few days later was allowed to go back to work while being told how much of a disappointment I was and how much my peers hated me, and some of them did and still do. One in particular refused to go on SportsCenter with me because he was so offended by my opinions and a few other things I had said in the podcast. But when I went back to work, My mom and dad had driven up from Pennsylvania. ESPN's in Connecticut. I live there. And my mom and dad came and literally pulled me off the ground. I was as alone as I'd ever been, and in the darkest space because of cancellation, which really did work. And they make you question, and they make you apologize, and they make you say, I'm so sorry, why? Let me conform. What Leigh Allen talked about, let me conform. And my dad and mom huddled me up, my dad, the old Army football player, and he said, ladies, we're gonna pray. And the prayer, this is the portion that means so much to me, from St. Michael the Archangel. Defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. And every day, from that moment on, from October of 2022 until the moment I left ESPN, every day I drove to work with mom and dad on the phone, and we said that prayer. And every day I felt like I was protected going in there because it was a battle. I had bosses. I had Bob Iger, the head of Disney, who wanted to make sure I was gone and silenced before I was gone. Coworkers, et cetera, made sure that I knew that I was not one of them any longer. The problem is, once they gave me my job back, they had taken the Masters, they had taken New York City Marathon, they had taken the Rose Parade, all these things I'd worked 30 years to earn. What I realized was while I'm on TV, being a robot, doing whatever they said, my peers were saying things that actually were political on ESPN airwaves. My friends were on an NBA show talking about how devastated they were that Roe versus Wade had been overturned. And where are the dads out there to make sure their daughters can get abortions if they need them on a basketball show? Or the LGBTQ alleged Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. If they read the bill, they would realize that those words were not in the bill, but people on certain sides choose not to read. But they were allowed to talk about that on a football show. And I was on a day off talking about a vaccine that I took. I did it. And so the double standard didn't sit well. And I finally decided, I can't do it. I can't be quiet anymore. I will follow your rules. But as parents, we know you can't have some rules for some kids, some of your children, but then the others can do whatever the heck they want. Just which one is it? And that's what I decided to stand up and to file a lawsuit against the Walt Disney Company. Listen, it is nothing I ever wanted to do. When I tell you I loved my job, that was my dream. I was living my dream. I loved my job, and I was so proud of my job. But I knew enough was enough, and I'd had dozens of people from work come up to me quietly in bathrooms saying, thank you, please don't be quiet. And so then I realized I'm living in this fear, and I'm being silenced, and I'm one of the few that had the platform, so I realized it was much bigger than me. The night before the lawsuit dropped, I spoke to each one of my kids. My oldest was a freshman at High Point University, and my son was a senior in high school, and my daughter was a sophomore in high school, my youngest. And I went to all three, and they had very different reactions because they knew what was going to come. Uh-oh, mom's making headlines again and opening her mouth, and it's going to affect me again. And their friends' parents are going to say things, and their coaches and their teachers are going to say things again and chop their grades in half because of their mom, which had happened in the past. So that's another reason why we live in fear as parents. And we stay silent because we want to protect our kids. What I realized the night before the lawsuit dropped when I talked to my son, Nicholas, who was 17 at the time, and I said, buddy, I'm sorry for what's about to come, but your mom can't stay quiet anymore. I am so sorry, but I have to stand up. And my son looked at me and said, Mom, it's about time you stood up for yourself. And I was so grateful, and I was also so sad, because I realized I had been failing him by staying quiet. Even though my heart was in the right place, as a mom, you want to protect, but I was preaching one thing and practicing another. I was a sellout to my own kids. So I knew at that moment that no matter what happened in this David versus Goliath lawsuit, one person against Disney, that no matter what, I would already win. I had already won by my kids singing, no more silence, no more living in fear. 3 weeks later, I was back at work again, covering, after the lawsuit had dropped, I was covering the PGA Championship in Southern Hills, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I met some of you beautiful souls from Oklahoma earlier today, and I was at the golf course, and I was walking along the left fairway, and long story short, from 280 yards away, 150 miles an hour, I was hit by a golf ball hit by John Rahm, probably the hardest hitter on the planet for those of you golf fans. And I happened to be looking, I know, look at your face, looking towards, I couldn't see, we were in the trees, we couldn't see, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this ball hit me square in the mouth, ricocheted so hard off my mouth that it went 50 yards into the fairway. I don't know how, listen, if I had been looking down for a split second at that moment, instead of hitting me here, where would it have hit me? Here, here, here. There's no way I would have survived that. Instead, I only lost 8 teeth and had 3 root canals. It's fine. I show you that picture with my bloody hand, hiding behind a tree to wait for the TV cameras to go by, because that was one of my darkest moments as well. First of all, I was grateful I was alive, but at that moment, what was going through my head, my mind, my soul was, this is what happens when you speak up. This is a sign. Shut up. Stay quiet. You were right to be fearful because they're going to come for you if you speak up. And then I got on the stretcher and they took me to the hospital. And that dark spirit, whatever that was, we have some ideas of saying, see, stay quiet, went away. And I realized, okay, I'm here. I'm here for a reason. You don't survive that. I'm here for a reason. A year later, another fear moment. I was asked to do something I'd never been asked to do before. NASCAR fan, I see you, girl. As Catholics, we pray quietly. I'm learning a lot more about my upbringing, my Catholic faith, and I love it and I appreciate it, and I need more. I'm realizing that as well. But we just pray quietly, and we pray at Grace, at dinner, and we pray in church, and otherwise it's very to ourselves, and I loved that. But someone asked me to come speak at a NASCAR race in Austin, Texas. Speak, meaning pray. Do the opening invocation for the race at this NASCAR track with 100,000 people in the stands and broadcast live on Fox. I'll give ESPN credit because I worked at ESPN and they knew this was important and they let me do it. And I was about to go on stage. I practiced for weeks because I don't pray out loud. That's not how I was raised. And I was scared, but I pushed through. And as I'm about to take the stage, as they're introducing me, listen, it had to be 34 seconds long. 34 seconds! Because it's live TV, and they have to then go to the flyover over the stadium. So I had to nail this in 34 seconds, and I was like, I'm not gonna read. I'm gonna memorize this thing and speak from the heart, but memorize it and not read. And as they're introducing me, everything I'd memorized, my mind went blank. Literally nothing was left in my brain, and I wanted to run. The fear took over, and I said, why did I say yes? What am I doing? Oh my goodness. And they said my name, and what do? You grab the mic, and you walk out to the middle of the stage, and I closed my eyes. And for the first time in my life, I prayed out loud in front of millions. But I go back so often to that moment right before, when my mind went blank, and nothing was there, to do the hardest thing I'd ever been asked to do, to be vulnerable and pray out loud. And somehow, by the grace of God, every single word that I had planned to say, that I was hoping to say and convey in that 34-second prayer came out perfectly. It was insane. Every single one of these examples, I was scared, I was embarrassed, I was mortified, I was canceled, I was all the things. And the fear was there, but it got a little bit less every time because I realized when I pushed through it, what happened on the other side usually came good things. On August 14th, 2023, my lawsuit settled. Out-of-court settlement with Disney, so I say that's a win, yes. I was proud because I pushed through the fear of standing up for myself, and more importantly, as I had learned through the cancellation process, which is really fun, is that there were so many other people who had the same fears, but were afraid to speak up. Afraid for their jobs, afraid for their salaries, afraid for their kids, afraid for like real reasons. And so I had a responsibility, I learned, to speak for those who didn't have that platform. So I was proud, but I was also scared because now what? For 30 years, that's all I did was television and live this dream and talk about sports, and it was gone. I won, but now what? A year later, my youngest daughter went to college. I sold the house in Connecticut. It's just me, sold the house, sold everything in it, kept some things that were keepsakes for my kiddos, put them in storage, and drove to Florida. I bought a condo during COVID, best business move I ever made in the state of Florida. And I was like, downsizing, I'm going, I'm out. And I drove away sobbing because of so many beautiful memories, 3 kids who are off. I don't call myself an empty nester, I call myself a bird launcher, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we are. It's true. Yes, we're sad without you, but we have launched you. Your parents, your loved ones launched you to get to this point, and it's still hard. And I'm driving away, and I'm sobbing for the 1,370-mile trip from Avon, Connecticut to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 23 hours, and I played this song by Francesca Battistelli on repeat. And this part of the chorus, joy comes, tears fall. I'm learning there is beauty in it all. It's not hard to find it, you just have to look. God is good. If you don't know Francesca, you need to. Her music is beautiful, and I thought I was at the right place for people who knew who Francesca Battistelli was. It's so true. Even in the darkest times, God's right there. I didn't fully know it until really getting broken and getting canceled and getting embarrassed and getting thrown out and starting over from scratch. And since then, oh my gosh, I didn't ever even want my own show. I'm like, who wants to do that, and the production and all the algorithms and YouTube and social media and subscribers, and please like and subscribe, yes, and comment. Like, I didn't know why people said that all the time. I get it. Like, starting from nothing, I loved going to work and crushing my show and my scripts and my highlights and my interviews, and then I could go home to my kids. Well, when you're in business, you can't do that, right? So it's been such a beautiful challenge, and to be able to sit down and not do interviews, but to have true conversations, because that's what's missing in this world today. I got to interview Leigh-Allyn Baker, to have a conversation, to learn her story, because no matter what you see from the people that you really look up to on TV or even dislike, everybody has a story. Everybody has a journey. Everybody has a why. And I want to know people's why, even if I don't agree with what they've said or done. It has been a blessing to have been kicked out of that, to have to make that decision, to be able to have those conversations that we need so much. I had no idea I would be able to be, moderating town halls during the election last year for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I remember being on stage in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 10 days before the election, and I got to introduce Donald Trump in a crowd of 5,000 people spilling outside the building. And I thought, what am I doing? Where am I? All I wanted to do in my life was talk about football. Like, what is this? And I thought, but God, what a blessing. What if we hadn't pushed through these moments that I know that you all have experienced as well? Crazy opportunities to wear that pink jacket. And I knew once I put that on and posted on Instagram, I was losing even more friends. I lost them by the thousands. What I've seen also is I've gained even more. Not because of my politics. Honestly, who cares? I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't really care who you vote for, because I need you to do the education, do the homework on your own, and be true to yourself. Just be kind about it, please. Can we do that? But I wanted the conversation, and I got to have it with these beautiful men and women who welcomed me with open arms. I never thought I would be on Trump Force One, the Monday night, Tuesday morning of the election, sitting this far from Donald Trump for 3 hours, going from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Palm Beach, Florida on election morning, with him DJing on the plane, keeping all of us awake all night long. I had no idea. And I sat at that moment and I thought, what if? What if we don't push through that fear with what? With faith. I have had the best time with my babies, who are not babies. My son is 6'4", 220 pounds. He is not a baby. However, by taking a chance and by starting over and not allowing the continuation of selling out, basically, like stopping living in fear, I got to be home more. I got to be with my kids. I got to show them what happens when you stop living in fear. Even though I get it, the fear is real, but you have to know what your line is. What is your line? I let people cross it. And that's, I'd get upset and it's like, well, they did this. And you know what? Yes, they did. Shame on them. But more importantly, shame on me if I accept it. And now we're not accepting it. I prayed this whole time. Every single time something happened, I thought after, oh my gosh, God was there. A little over a year ago, I prayed because I thought, I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. I don't want to die alone. But I know I was a lot because, oh my gosh, she had this career and ESPN and people know who she is and she's been canceled and then, oh my gosh, she's a right winger but black people can't think like I mean, all of the things. And I was like, I'm going to be single forever. And one day, I went down to the beach where I live in Florida and I said, Lord, please, deleted the dating apps, I deleted them. Please, Lord, don't bring me anybody until you bring me somebody. That was on January 1st, 2024. And on November 12th of 2024, the most incredible soul walked into my life. And we've been married for 7 weeks. So, happy anniversary to me. The only reason I show you those cheesy pictures is because I think, what if? Do you want to see it again? Yeah. Like, what if, though? What if I had lived in fear? What if I continued to stay quiet? The paycheck was really good. The lifestyle was really good, but it wasn't that good. And I knew my kids were watching. When my son said to me that day, it's about time, Mom. And when you let go, and when you let God, and when you're true to yourself, and you give it up. I tried to control everything for so long, and it's not worth it. Every day, I'm amazed at my new life, at the freedom Uncensored, the freedom that I'm experiencing today, which would not have happened without the fear. So much fear, so much sadness, but sadness because I knew I was a sellout and living in fear. Without that fear, without that heartbreak, it made me rely on what? My faith. My faith, and knowing that God was always there the whole time. So, with what's next for you all, and by the way, not just the students, but the parents and the faculty, it's never too late. I will be 53 years old in November. It is never too late. I'm late to this movement, but it's not too late, is it? So when we're in our classrooms, and when we're at the mall, and when we're doing whatever it is we're doing in life, and as you begin your careers and your jobs, what are you going to do? Please, I wanted to share my journey so you are better than me, and you don't wait as long to be fearless. And when you question what you're supposed to do, I want you to think of this. Do you want to say it with me? Ready? Make us to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half-truth when the whole can be one. I tell you what, it makes your decisions so much easier when you think of it that way. Even if it's scary, even if it's costly, choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong. And never, ever, promise me, never be content with a half-truth when the whole can be one. God bless you, Liberty. Thank you.